Hey everybody, thank you for joining me. I'm Romi Hill and I am the designer behind Designs by Romi. And I'm getting kind of like situated and getting used to doing a weekly live on Thursdays. So once in a while, of course, it won't be Thursday, but I'll let you know if I'm not. So as usual, thank you so much for joining me. And there's a little bit of a delay, so you'll see me. I think I'm about 6 minutes, not 6 minutes, sorry, like 6 to 8 seconds delayed. So I am coming to you, and then you'll see me and react in the comments. And so I will answer your questions, I promise, but I might not see them immediately. But I am actually watching everybody. And I'm so glad you could join, Yvonne. I won't tell. And everybody else, I'm so happy that you're here. This is fantastic. Okay. So, I am going to be talking about a few things today. So we're going to do the braid on, like the first braid on my essential bucket hat. And here is my essential bucket hat for those of you who haven't seen it before. So we're going to do this first braid up here on the bottom. And so that's one of the things. And then also a tubular cast on. So a tubular cast on is like the edge of machine knit stuff that you might see. So like if you buy machine knit socks or sweaters or something like that, and they have that really nice rolled edge to them, that is a tubular cast on, and I'm going to be talking about that today. And then also last week I showed you how to make a pom-pom with a pom-pom maker. So this week I'm going to show you how to do a tassel with nothing special. So just with whatever you have handy. You don't need any type of maker or anything like that to do one. And really, you can do this for a pom pom too. So I'm just going to show you on a tassel today. And I'm also going to show you how to make a drawstring cord like in some of my patterns. So if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask in the comments and I will answer them. And in fact, Yvonne had a question, so I will be answering that today. And just looking where everybody's like coming in from. So I am in northern Nevada, for those of you who don't know, and I'm very, very far away from Las Vegas, which is usually what people think of when they think of Nevada. But I'm in the northern part and I'm about 5 minutes from the California border. So if you look at the state of Nevada and there's that little corner that's kind of near Lake Tahoe area, I am kind of in that area. So as the crow flies, I'm like half an hour from Lake Tahoe. In reality, as the car drives, I'm more like an hour and 15 minutes from Lake Tahoe. Um, but I live at around 5,500 feet. And so I'm kind of in the foothills, but we get snow and it's a high desert climate. So for those of you who are wondering. And it's a really beautiful sunny day today. And it's getting really cold at night. So we've had several hard freezes so far. And let's see. Okay, so Yvonne, I will answer all of your questions. Um, you guys are so wonderful. I just love you for showing up and saying hi and everything. Okay, all right. So let's talk about the essential bucket hat first, because I know Yvonne is here to see that and she's at work. So let's do that one first. And she had a couple of questions about it. So um, just gonna move my stuff around a little bit and grab my all of my stuff here. Okay, So I have mine right here, and we're ready to do a braid. So you may know this as an Estonian or Vickel braid, and this is an alternate way of doing it. So um, on this particular hat, I wanted it to be thicker and I wanted it to be a little bit easier to manage with the bulky yarn. So that is why it's set up the way it is. So let me just switch over here to my hands. Okay, so here is where we left off at the end of putting this edge together here. And that is over in the brim area right here. So for this first round here, I have asked you to put all of the stitches on a spare circular needle, and it's a much smaller size, and that is so it's easier to manipulate the stitches. Because the yarn is so bulky, in my opinion, they get really difficult to manipulate, the stitches do. So, and I tend to kind of um, knit tighter with bulky yarn because it's just so big and fuzzy. So the first thing I'm going to do is stick all of my stitches here um, onto my spare needle. And this is a way smaller needle. Um, I think this one is like a 2, and it shouldn't be above like a size 6. So it needs to be pretty small. As you can see, my stitches are fairly tight on here, and I kind of tend, as I go along with bulky yarn, I tend to tighten up stitches, which is super annoying to me, but I do anyway. Um, so I try to keep them as loose as possible, but it's one of those things. I tend to knit on the tips of my needles because it goes faster. And yeah. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to answer Yvonne's question in the comments. And she asked for the second braid, if you have to put the stitches on a smaller needle again. Yes, I would. And that is to keep it nice and stiff. So this enables you to knit tighter and to make a tighter braid across there. And I'm just trying to keep that brim nice and tight around here. And I'll show you what I mean. So here is what we're about to do, that braid. So if you continue to knit on these larger needles, it does get pretty tight. So in my opinion, it's best this way. And Marianne, you are a sweetheart. My patterns are totally not perfect, but I love that you said that because you completely made my day. Um, I am always learning as well. So, um, yeah, as I learn extra tricks, I go back and kind of edit my patterns. And I am going to show you a little trick I learned that I'm actually going to put into my essential bucket hat pattern, but I want to show you first. And that is a way to close up the that braid around the bottom. So I have a way in my pattern, and it uses a duplicate stitch, which is actually a great way to close it up. So I'll show you what it looked like on my hat. This is just a second way that you can close it up while you are working in the round. And you don't have to wait to the end to close that braid up. So it's too bad that Kathleen couldn't make it today for the braid because Kathleen loves braids. She every time there's a braid, she's into any type of braid. So, okay, almost. And Kathleen is a moderator in my Ravelry and Facebook groups. And if you're in those groups, you will probably have seen her getting excited about braids. So, okay, almost to the end. I realize this takes a little while, but if you actually just spend a little extra time to put your stitches on a spare needle like this, your braid is going to be much um, snugger, and you're going to be able to have just a nicer, tighter braid across there. Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to stick this other needle in the back because I'm going to be working these stitches back onto my larger needle here. This is the smaller needle as far as the pattern goes. So this is still the US 11 needle, I think. Yeah, US 11 needle. And this, as I was saying, this is a little bit of a different type of braid from what you're used to seeing as a bickle braid. So the first thing I'm going to do is just stick in a pin here so I remember where I am. And I'm going to start with a yarn over onto my right needle. And now I'm going to come over here to this small needle and knit two together through the back loop. And that's just going to come right off the needle. And for that first one, I'm going to sort of tighten it up. So once that's done, I am going to slip that stitch back onto my left needle, yarn over, and do another knit two together through the back loop and slip this back. And it's going to start to create a braid across here. Yarn over, knit two together through the back loop. So I have tried this before without sticking them on the smaller needle, and it came out to be very, very loose. So I want to have a nice tighter braid across here to snug up the brim so that there's a little bit of stiffness to the brim. Okay, let me get this through here. As you can see, knitting with this kind of yarn, fuzzy yarn, bulky fuzzy yarn, it can be a bear. So, okay, so now are you ready for this? This is my little crochet hook trick for this braid if you like crochet hooks. So I'm going to yarn over and insert my crochet hook, pull this through. That comes off my needle, and then I'm going to put it back on here. So that's one braid stitch. So yarn over, insert my crochet hook through these first two stitches, and pull my yarn through, and stick that stitch back onto my small needle there. So if you like to use crochet hooks, I know some knitters do not like to use crochet hooks, but I think that in this case, um, this crochet hook makes things go much faster and gives you exactly the same braid across here. So I can actually go way faster on this. Maybe you can too. So here's another stitch. Don't forget the yarn over. Okay. And you're basically just crocheting a braid around and attaching it to your body stitches. Okay, so because I know you don't want to watch me do a braid for an hour or however long this will take me, I am just going to show you my ending part here. So I have another one ready. So here's my first braid all the way around, and you can see this edge. It's nice and stiff across here. Okay, so I am at the end. I've come back to the end. Here's my first yarn over. So I am going to join this. This is my last knit two together through the back loop, and it's up on my right hand needle. I'm going to kind of enlarge this a little bit. Then I'm going to take my crochet hook and stick it underneath the legs of this first braid and grab that loop and pull it through. I want to keep that out of the way. Kind of tighten it up a little right there. Now that is going to go back up onto my needle. And I'm just going to pull this. Okay, so this is my last stitch. It went through the bottom, like right here of that first little braid stitch right there, and back up onto my needle, and I can tighten that up too if I want. So I'm just going to pull this a little bit so it's tightened up. So it's going to look like there's a little bit of a gap there. Don't worry about that. It will come together when you knit it. And this right here, this is the start of the round, even though my pin looks a little bit off. So I'm just going to move this so it's really obvious where my round is starting. And so that is, the braid has come together more. There's a little technique in the back of this pattern that shows how to use duplicate stitch to make this join look better. And I will no doubt do that because that looks a little bit off down there. So I'll probably duplicate stitch it just with this little tail that I left to make it look even better than it does now. Okay. So, E. Kelly asked this is a size H. What size crochet hook? It's a size H. Just whatever you're comfortable with. I don't think it really matters. So this comfortably grabbed the yarn for me. And so that's what I ended up using. Okay. So Yvonne asked me a question today, which made me realize that when I wrote this round two, I wasn't all that clear. I could have been clearer. So I'm actually going to go back and clarify this and I will update the pattern. So round two is a decrease round. And I realized after Yvonne wrote that you might interpret this knit two together through the back loop, knit one through the back loop 6 times or 8 times, like that whole thing being 6 or 8 times. But it's actually knit one through the back loop is 6 or 8 times. So in these parentheses and the brackets, that is the larger size. So this is the smaller size, and then here's the larger size. So it's knit 3 through the back loop or knit 5 through the back loop. And I should have used that over here. And I think that's maybe a little bit confusing. So I am going to go back and just write that a little bit differently so it's not confusing anymore. So sorry about that. Sorry about that, Yvonne. And so this actually does add up. I checked through it carefully to make sure that it did actually add up. If that's red, knit one through the back loop 6 times or knit one through the back loop 8 times. Okay, let's see. So Judy said, I finished my hat and it came out a bit large. And I'm going to try resoaking it and put it in the dryer for a few minutes. That's a great idea. So when things come out a little bit too big, also, if you have stretched it to block it, sometimes that is going to make things come out a little bit big. So if you just lay it flat and kind of pull it down a little bit instead of putting it on a balloon or something like that to stretch it, that can also help. But definitely throwing it in the dryer, that's a great idea. Just make sure that you keep checking and you don't felt anything. So hopefully, hopefully, Yvonne, I hope that answers your questions. And sorry that that was confusing. So I will actually update the pattern and make it less confusing. And then let's see. So Marianne asked, when any lace weight yarn is 400 yards plus to 50 grams, is that considered zero weight? Um, so 400 yards to 50 grams is not a lace weight. Um, oh, yeah, actually it is. Yeah, it is. It's a lace weight. It's a super fine, I guess you would call it. So in the yarn database things where they're like 0, 1, 2, 3, super fine, fine, and all of that, they're kind of more weighted, no pun intended, to the middle weight yarns. So there's more differentiation in the middle than there is at either end. So there's a whole bunch of different yarns that are just sort of categorized as super fine, and a whole bunch that are categorized as super bulky. So that is a lace weight yarn. Um, it's like a heavier lace weight yarn. So like a true lace weight would maybe be 1,000 to 1,200 yards per 100 grams. So 400 yards to 50 grams is on the heavier side for a lace weight, but it is still considered to be a lace weight. And let's see. Okay. Just catching up on everything. Alrighty, so I'm going to put those aside. So, and I did want to say again for the essential bucket hat, definitely put those stitches back after you have done that decrease row. Definitely put your stitches back onto your small needle and use it again. Do the exact same thing on your next braid. So let me move this over a little bit. I'm just going to transition back for a moment. Okay, so at round 2, so I have specified that everything be knit through the back loop because these are yarn overs that are on the needles. So knitting it through the back loop is going to close up the stitch and make it more dense so that the brim is denser. So let me just show you what that looks like. So this is a size large, so I'm just going to knit through the back loop just to twist my stitch. And it just twists my stitch at the base here. So there's 2 stitches, 3, 4, and 5. So even if you had a few little sloppy stitches in there, twisting those stitches is going to close it right up. And here's a knit 2 together through the back loop, which we've just been doing all the way around on this braid here. So that's what it looks like. And you can see closes up the yarn over at the base there. Okay. So let me just transition back and the other questions. Alrighty. Let me put this aside. So the other big thing I wanted to talk to you about is my favorite, well, one of my favorite techniques, tubular cast on. I love the way tubular cast on works. And I definitely have a favorite type of tubular cast on. It's not necessarily the quickest, but I think it's the most versatile because it's just easy to join in the round, super easy. It starts with a waste yarn cast on. So there are several methods that don't, and I showed you one of them with the essential bucket hat. So that first step that I did where I used the waste yarn cast on and then folding them and knitting one stitch from one side and one stitch from the other side, that is actually a tubular cast on. And if we had done a knit from the front and a purl from the back, then we would have been able to continue that in ribbing. So that type of tubular cast on, you're going to want to use a slightly larger needle to do that if you're going to use it for ribbing. So say if you're doing ribbing on a US 6 needle, you would use a US 7 and possibly, depending on how tight you knit, maybe even a US 8 because the stitches are pulling across and you want the edge to be nice and stretchy. So that's going to be important and it tends to pull in a little bit because you are folding it in half and you're basically making twice the stitches out of half the cast on. So, okay. So there are a couple of others. I'm going to show you, actually, I'm going to show you first my less favorite one, which is still, I mean, it's still pretty a cool cast on. It's called an Italian cast on, and it is a tubular cast on. But in my opinion, it kind of twists a little bit. So if you wanted to cast on maybe 5 stitches or something like that to do brioche or double knitting or whatever, then I think it works really nicely. But if you want to do more than that, it's it's really easy for them to twist up and then you can't figure out where your cast on is and the entire cast on edge is just going to sort of twist around and it won't be that really nice roll anymore, so it's counterproductive, I think. If you do want to cast on a whole bunch of stitches on this, you're going to want to do it on a straight needle. And since I usually use circulars, this isn't as versatile as the next method I'm going to show you. But let me just show you here. Okay, so the Italian cast on is a 2-strand cast on. So your tail is going to be about 3 times the length of the width of whatever it is that you want to cast on. So say I want to cast on something that's 5 inches across, my tail is going to be 15 inches. Okay, so I like to start it with just a twist here, and I'm going to have this back strand here is over the top. So I'm going to come under both strands and grab my front strand and bring it back. And if you take a look closely there, that looks like a pearl. You can see that sort of pearl look across there. Now I'm going to go in front of this top strand or the front strand right here, and then over the back strand and pull that through to make a knit stitch. Underneath, pull this back around to make a purl stitch. And now I want a knit stitch, purl stitch. So I'm casting on for 1 by 1 ribbing. And you can actually, it's a kind of a cool motion. So once you get used to it, the motion is really easy. It's as easy as a long tail. That's that kind of rocking motion that you get. Okay, so I ended here with a knit stitch right here. So with an Italian cast on, there's a couple of things that you can do. Right from here, you can actually just start working 1 by 1 ribbing. You're just going to turn it over and start working. And you want to leave a selvage stitch on either end here if you're going to seam it. So I started with a knit. So the first one is a purl. So if you're actually going to seam it, if you're going to make sweater pieces, then you're going to want another purl here at the end because you started with a knit. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this over. And for me, I like to do a selvage. If the selvage is, if I'm going to be picking up stitches along the selvage, I like to do a twisted garter selvage. But in this particular case, I'm just going to do a twisted selvage. So selvage stitch, actually, I'm not going to twist it. A selvage stitch is just the stitch. It's basically your seam allowance. So there's my first stitch. I just knit it. I'm going to purl this second stitch. And I'm just going to do 1 by 1 knitting, ribbing all the way across here. So this is one way to do the Italian cast on. You can also do it with a couple of setup rows where you're going to be slipping stitches in here. And the setup is pretty much the same as this next one I'm going to show you. So I'm just going to show you this and see what you think. So this gives you a much lighter edge than my other cast on that I'm going to show you. And if you're going to use the Italian cast on, you want to use a smaller needle than what you're going to be working the ribbing with, because as you can see across here, it tends to kind of pull apart and get loose. So this is going to be I'm probably going to be working with a 6 on this ribbing, and I think this is a 4 needle. So I went down just a couple of needle sizes, and I like to clean up my ribbing by knitting or by purling on the right side, doing an Eastern combination purl, and I find that that keeps my knit columns much nicer and neater. So whereas I would insert and purl with my yarn going over the top. Normally, for an Eastern combination, my yarn's going to go underneath. So it's going to mount my stitch with the right leg in back and the left leg in front. So this is how I like to do ribbing to make it look nice and neat. And if you were an English style knitter, you would be usually, you would purl like this, but instead you're going to purl like this. So knit as usual. And then when you're purling, you're going to go under. And you can tell if you've done it right if your stitch has the right leg in back and the left leg in front. And that really cleans things up a lot. So because ribbing has that sort of propensity to stretch in the knit columns. So this is going to help. And then let me show you on the back how you're going to work that. I can get my tail out of the way here. Okay. So on the back, you'll see that your stitches are mounted in two different ways. So this first one, because it was a purl on the other side, has the right leg and back. So you're going to knit through the back loop. And I never do both sides Eastern when I'm doing my ribbing. I only do the front side. So here's this is a purl column on the front side. So that means, and the stitch is right leg and back and left leg in front. So I'm going to knit through the back loop, and that is going to give me a straight stitch. And I'm just going to continue all the way across here, knitting through the back loop and purling with a Western mount. And that actually helps ribbing look a lot better, in my opinion. For most people, I think it does. It may not for you, so that's why swatching is always the best. Always swatch. I mean, swatching can be actually pretty fun too, so. Okay. All right, so here is after just a couple rows, and you can see at the bottom here, it has that kind of roll around the edge here that makes it a tubular cast on. It's very stretchy. The edge is very loose and stretchy. So if you don't like tight rib at the bottom, this is a really good cast on to use. I don't like it actually when it really pulls in. So this is a great cast on to use for that. This is not as hard wearing as you might make it, but I'll show you in my next demo in a couple minutes. I will show you how to make that edge a lot tougher and thicker. So if you want a harder wearing edge. Okay, so I'm going to show you my favorite waste yarn cast on along with a tubular cast on. So waste yarn cast on, my crochet cast on, you've probably seen this before, but it's used in a whole bunch of things, like not just a tubular cast on. For instance, this is my footsie pattern. This is from my Acts of Kindness ebook. These are really fun. They're just like little hacky sack looking things. So these, I wanted to make both ends look exactly the same. So they start with a waste yarn cast on, and then you work to one end and bind off, and then you pick up the stitches. and you work to the other side and bind off too. So both of the sides are identical. Both the ends are identical. And same for the second sides here. You can see the sides are identical. I really like to make them look the same, so hence doing that. Okay, and here's the other one. These are very fun. You should make some of them. They're a lot of fun to play with. So my son even likes them. Okay, and then here's a tubular cast on. Here, that one used a waste yarn. That is on my Rhine pattern. And this is my Sierra Snowcap. This also uses a tubular cast on. I think that is the nicest cast on for ribbing. I just think it looks really beautiful. Okay. And also my Fuzzy Love. I think you can see this one better because it's a lighter color. Tubular cast on. I think it looks really nice and finished. Highly recommend. 100%. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Okay, so to do this cast on, the first thing I'm going to do is make a waste yarn cast on, and I'm going to show you how to do this with 2 circular needles in the round, because that's how it's mostly used in the patterns that I have in my Acts of Kindness. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to use waste yarn to cast on half the stitches that you want to end up with. So if I want to end up with, for instance, 20 stitches, I am going to cast on 10 stitches. So what I'm going to do is cast on to my needle here, my waste yarn. So here's my only live stitch is going to remain on my crochet hook, and it's kind of hanging down in the middle there. So this is an absolute, like, it's a guaranteed unzippable cast on if you do this correctly. So you don't ever want to make your chain with the needle. Basically, you're just getting your needle in the way of the chain. So I'm going to come over the top of the needle and pull my yarn through that loop. So here's my first stitch cast on, and I'm just going to keep doing this. So if I pulled this needle out, it would be completely fine. Nothing would unravel because there are no actual live stitches on that needle. The only live stitch is on my crochet hook. So if you've ever picked up yarn or picked up stitches from a crochet chain, you'll probably know that you're supposed to pick them up from the little bump in the back of the chain. And that is actually what we're doing here. So here is the front of the chain. This is the back. This is the bump that you would have been picking up. But it's so hard sometimes to figure out which is the bump and which is the chain that it's really easy to get messed up here. So let me just continue to, okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna do 14 stitches. So that means I'm gonna end up with 28 stitches. So at the end, super important to remember which end you stopped with. Always mark it. Otherwise, it's just so easy to forget. So I always just put my pin right through that loop and I'm going to pull it tight and grab my trusty little scissors and snip. Okay. So here are my stitches. For my first row, I'm going to take my other circular needle. I'm going to distribute this onto 2 circular needles. So I'm going to knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. So this is where I am doubling my stitches. There's going to be a yarn over in between each knit stitch. And now that's half of them. I'm going to do the other half here. So this first row here doubles everything. And again, with this one, like the Italian one, I have used smaller needles than I'm going to end up using. So here's what I have so far. This takes a little bit of, it's a little weird to join here. So I usually keep my stitches on the needle so I can fold it in half and not twist it. So here is my last yarn over. And now I'm just going to hold these together and pull that back needle through because I'm going to be working stitches off of that back needle. I'm going to turn this around. Okay, just sort of pull everything down. So now the stitches that are on the front needle are going to stay on this front needle, and the stitches that are on the back needle are going to stay on the back needle. So they're always going to stay that way. And that's what's going to make it easy to do this. Okay, so here is that front needle. I usually like to use a different color cord because I think that makes it so much more obvious. Okay, so on my first round, I am going to slip this first stitch with my yarn and back. And now I'm going to pull this needle through to make it a little bit easier for myself. And now I'm going to purl the yarn over. So that's going to be a little bit sloppy at the beginning, but that's okay. You'll be able to pull this tail and neaten it up later. So slip with yarn and back, bring your yarn forward and purl. Slip with yarn and back, yarn forward to purl, and you're going to go all the way around, slipping the stitches and purling the yarn overs. So there's my first needle, and I'm going to turn it onto this side. and slip with my yarn in back and purl the yarn over, slip with yarn in back, purl the yarn over. Okay. So we're almost to the end here. I think I left out a yarn over. So if you leave out a yarn over like I did, what you're going to do is just sneak in here in between the chain and try to pull one up, which can be difficult sometimes. But I'm going to grab that yarn and just pull it up there so that I can purl it. Okay, so I slip my yarn in back. Now I'm going to purl my yarn over. Slip with yarn in back. And it will be fairly obvious if you have skipped a yarn over. All right, so I'm at the end. I'm going to pull this through. Then I'm going to start on my second round. So before I slipped the stitches, so this time I am going to knit them. I'm going to try to kind of snug that up a little bit. So for the purl stitches now, I'm going to bring my yarn in front and slip the purl stitches purlwise. Knit, yarn forward, slip my purl stitch purlwise. So what this is doing is mimicking one by one ribbing, and it's going to give you a really nice edge. And you can also do these slipped stitches like this with the Italian cast on, and that will give you a thicker edge than you would otherwise have if you don't do these. Okay, so I'm on the other side here. I like to snug this up a little bit. So I'm knitting, slipping the purls with yarn in front, knitting, slipping the purl with yarn in front. So you're always going to mimic a purl stitch by slipping with yarn in front. Okay. And now I'm going to do one more. So it's a little bit of an odd transition between these two rounds because I just slipped this purl stitch with the yarn in front. And now I'm going to go back and start my next round where I am again going to slip the knit stitch. But the yarn was in front for the last purl stitch I slipped. And here it's in back for this first knit stitch of the round. And so all the stitches are slipped purlwise, which means as if to purl. So you're sticking your needle in as if to purl. Now I'm going to bring my yarn front and purl, and I'm just going to go around slipping my knit stitches and purling my purl stitches. And I like that when you join this in the round, it's really easy to see if it's twisted because you can always look at the bottom and see, oh look, here's the waste yarn. Okay, so I must be doing this okay because my waste yarn is all the way across the bottom here and it's not twisting or anything. And I'm using a little bit of a larger needle than I think I would usually use here. So I might even have gone down another needle size. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to work around in plain ribbing. Still trying not to twist any stitches here. So I'm just going to work around in 1 by 1 ribbing. And basically what we've been doing is a type of double knitting. Yeah, as I see Joy beat me to it. Yeah, double knitting is really similar, but just different enough, I think. Okay, so I'm just doing plain old knit one, purl one, ribbing all the way around. And I really need to do a double knitting pattern because it's so much fun. So, oh, and speaking of patterns, I am going to, tomorrow, I am going to release a serialized ebook, um, like Oddments ebook, one pattern per month for a year. And it's going to be hands and feet. So mitts, socks, slippers, wrist warmers, that type of thing. So hopefully you will join me for that. And it will be one pattern every month. So a total of 12 patterns. And I will probably throw in a little extra gift or something, gift pattern, because it's fun. Okay, so I'm just going to do half a row, and then I'm going to take this waste yarn out at the bottom. This is my favorite part. I think it's kind of magic. Unzipping. This is like the only time I just completely unzip it, and I'm not even careful. I just unzip and then pull. Okay, so I'm going to take this out, and this is the side I'm going to unzip from. I didn't actually make a knot here. It was just a slip knot with my pin through it. And I'm just going to take this and pull. I can pull from the other end too. And now I'm just going to pull my waste yarn out. And here is my tubular cast on. So as I was saying before, I could have actually used a little bit of a smaller needle. Here, this is a little large. So I think I would have gone down another size. Alrighty. Yes, and Joy said, just different enough that the cast on super fails. Yes, it's so true. Sue asked, are these all new oddments? So the ones that I'm going to, the the vehicle I'm going to release tomorrow is going to be a new oddment each month. So a totally new pattern every month for a year. So starting with this year and then ending a year from now. So 12 of them, and I'll probably make it a baker's dozen because that's fun. Okay, so we did that. And now, alrighty, so I'm going to show you how to make a tassel. And you can use anything to make a tassel. You don't necessarily have to like have any, so I'm just going to make a tassel using this. So all you're going to do is wrap, wrap, wrap. So I'm just going to wrap this all around. I'm going to keep wrapping and wrapping. And you can do this. This would really work for a pom-pom as well. This one would be a really big one though, so I don't recommend doing a pom-pom this big because it would probably take like a skein of yarn to do it. I mean, it would like to get it to be fluffy enough would take so much yarn. Alrighty, so I've just wrapped around. I'm gonna cut that. And now I'm going to grab my little needle that I have. Okay, so grab my needle. Here's my end here. Just going to go under and just get all of those pieces together like that. Since my end was on that side, I think I'm gonna bring it around to the back here. I always like to tie this up before I cut it. I'm just gonna tie that in a regular square knot. Okay, so since I tied it right over here, I'm going to pull this around a little bit. Now I'm gonna just start cutting across here. So here's the beginning of my tassel, but I want to attach it to something. So I'm going to leave this here for a moment. And now I'm going to go and make a little drawstring to tie it to. This is going to be super short. It's going to be a really short drawstring because there's not that much room under the camera to do a giant one. I'm just going to tie this at one end. Actually, I'm going to double it. I'm going to make this a thicker drawstring. Okay. I'm going to tie it at one end so I can stick a pencil through here. And this end, so when I'm doing these for real, I stick this on the doorknob or something like that so that I can twist it. In this particular case, there's enough room here between my fingers to be able to really twist it. So I'm just going to twist, 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 twist. So Joy is correct. Sue, Joy is correct. There is a flat 3 needle bind off. Um, and I actually have a little tutorial on it on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in doing that. Okay, so I twisted this and twisted it, and you can kind of tell when it's ready when it's starting to do that. You're going to fold it in half like this and basically let it twist on itself. You want to help it along a little bit so you don't get little bits of the sticking out. And this is what you want. You want it to look like this. So this end, and then here's the other end here. I am going to tie a knot. So it's pretty important to tie a knot because this can come out. So here's my knot on this end, and I want to tie a knot on the other end too. So I'm just going to have a little teeny tiny bit right here, and I'm going to attach this to my tassel. So here's my knot. I'm going to cut this in the middle. And now you can see how it starts to come out like that. Okay, so here's my tassel. I'm going to lay that down. And here underneath is where I've tied it. Kind of going to fix that up a little bit. And I'm just going to tie it in the same area here that I had tied it before. So usually I like to make these longer, but they don't necessarily have to be. They can just be long enough like this. I'm going to tie it tight. Square knot. Okay, so now that we're on the other side here, here's the top and the underneath. So now this area all around the outside, I'm going to bring it down. And I'm going to take some more yarn here. So sometimes what I like to do is tape this across here so that it will hold nice and tight, but I'm just going to tie it this time. So I just want it, it's always easier to move it down instead of up. Tie it on one side, I'm going to turn it over and tie it on the other side. I find it is easier to make this a little tighter if you're not tying a knot on just one side. And now I will tie my square knot. Okay, and after that, I am going to get the ends and put them on the inside here. And one more end. And right through the middle. Okay, so once that is done, now it can be trimmed across. And for this, I really do use tape. I just tape across and then trim, and that really helps keep it nice and even. But there we go. There is a tassel, and you can see, just maybe I'll make an earring. Okay, so everything should be hidden on the inside here. And that can be adjusted down a little bit. And then this end, you should keep these a little bit longer if you're going to attach it to a shawl or something like that. Alrighty, there we go. Okay, so let me see what else I missed. Um, so Sue, if you look at my playlist, it's the Teeny Tiny Tutorials playlist. There will be a 3 needle bind off and a modified 3 needle bind off. So the 3 needle bind off is the one that you want to use on the wrong side, and that will bring things together in a seam. The modified 3 needle bind off is the one where it gives you like a flat chain across the top. So, in other words, it's really flat. So, whereas with a 3 needle bind off, you'll have pearl bumps on one side. This is modified, so there are no pearl bumps, and it actually comes together and lays really flat. So, I think that would look pretty. Um, okay, excellent. Ooh, yeah, bookmarker. Marianne, great idea. My new bookmarker. Yay. Perfect. That's a perfect idea. So, thank you all so much. I hope that you are knitting along. I think I said something about my knit along, but now, like, that was an hour ago. So I'll just say again, there's an Oddments knit along going on, and so all of my Oddments books, my first two, there is my Great Oddments Knit Down, and then Acts of Kindness, Oddments 2. They're both, if you're a newsletter subscriber, you will have gotten a 20% off coupon. If you are not, there's a 15% coupon, which is Oddments 15. And so they're all marked down through November 15th, as well as some other smaller projects that use odds and ends and lots of fun little techniques and stuff. And this Oddments uh, knit along or, kind of hang out, I don't know, generally lasts pretty much through November and then like through the holidays because people are doing gift knitting and so it's fairly laid back and it's going to be mostly on Instagram and YouTube. So every week I'm going to be showing you different techniques that are in my Oddments patterns and oh, and just because I forgot to show you before, this is a cuppy sweater. It actually has a tubular cast on. So if you want to try something that like is just a tiny little tubular cast on, you could do this and they're really fun. They only take little tiny bits of scraps. And they also have a sewn tubular bind off too. And I will show you the bind off next week. So these are really fun. And as, also, in addition to the tubular cast on and bind off, they have a jogless join stripe written into the pattern. So it's just like a little tiny piece of cuteness that you can practice on. And people totally love them. One of my test knitters gave them to all of her work colleagues, and they absolutely adored them. So, I mean, what more could you ask for? Fun and giftable. So, so I hope you'll do a few. And we'll also be knitting in my Ravelry group and my Facebook group. So you don't have to just be on Instagram and YouTube, but it's kind of fun to have everybody showing things on Instagram because there are different people on different platforms knitting together. And so that's kind of a cool place to like come all together and everybody can show projects and stuff. So use tag, um, I'm going to put it in the notes because now Because now I don't remember if I put 2023 up front or in the back, and I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. So I'll put it in the notes, and hopefully you will be knitting along. And if you have any questions about the techniques or one in particular that you want me to show, I'm happy to show it. This is really fun, and it's really fun to see you there in the comments, asking questions and hanging out. So thank you. And yay. Okay. So Joyce says double knitting pattern. Oh, okay. Yes, I will. I will keep you in mind for a double knitting pattern tester, Joy, for sure. Alrighty. So yay, Nancy, that's perfect. I'm so glad the tutorial helped. Yes, that's excellent. So don't put down your project just because you don't know how to do something. Just ask me and I will show it. Um, I am happy to. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy hanging out with you. And thank you so much for hanging out with me too. And I will see you very soon. So take care. Have a great weekend and happy knitting, everybody. Bye bye.